Hello and welcome to the final Irish NFL show of the regular season as we look ahead to Week 18. Happy New Year to everybody listening to us. My name is Shane Brennan. Tonight I'm joined by Kieran Boyle, Kieran O'Donovan and Noel Dowling as we take a quick spin through all of the action we can look ahead towards Week 18. And we're going to talk a little bit later about what head coaches are on the chopping block. We're talking sacks, this time not as a quarterback statistic, but in terms of who is going to find themselves out of a job in this early part of 2025. Thank you for everybody for joining us. We definitely hope that everyone is enjoying the last taste of regular season football before we get really busy into the playoffs. January is, of course, the most wonderful time of the year. We'd like to remind everybody that the first segment tonight is brought to you by Rootpoint, demonstrating the value of global PR and comms. We'll kick straight into this weekend's game, guys, because we're treated to two games on Saturday, both in the AFC North, which is a nice one for those who'll be keeping an eye on what's been going on in Hard Knocks, but also important in terms of who is going to win the division, because as it stands, it is advantage Ravens. They'll definitely want to get a victory over the line as they host the Cleveland Browns. No, Ravens are coming to this as 18-point favorites. I think a reflection of the fact that A, there's a quality gap between these two sides, but B, as much as a lot of top teams like the Bills, like the the Chiefs, well, the Chargers as well maybe, are resting some of their starters. The Ravens know full well that before we get to see the Steelers later on Saturday, this game kicking off at 9:30 Irish time, Browns at Ravens. The Ravens need to put their stamp in this game as early as possible and make sure that they know full well they're going to win the division. But the AFC North is the AFC North. Crazy things happen. And, Noel is gone. So I'm going to go to you, Kieran from Cork first. Crazy things happen in the AFC North. How much confidence do you have in the Ravens to get this done quite confidently, Kieran?
Yeah, look, I have a lot of confidence in them to get it done. And they're going to want to get it done early. They're going to want I talked about protecting weapons there a few weeks ago. And the worst case scenario is that this game drags on too long. And they put some of the big names at risk. I think that's going to be, it'll be get in, get the job done and get out, and hopefully get out of it unscathed. Look, when you look at the Ravens, we talked about it over the last few weeks. I think they're really coming into the type of form that they would want to going into the playoffs now. You've got how many times have we spoken about Lamar? He's in the MVP hunt, and you'd wonder whether he can. With the Bills game kind of being a bit of a garbage game this week, you'd wonder whether Lamar can, put that final stamp on a make a case for an MVP, whether he's got that in mind or not. So look, yeah, I wouldn't spend too long talking about it. I think they're going to get the job done, and it's just you'd hope for them that they get it done quickly. Just very interestingly, I just wonder if there is a scenario where the Steelers win the division, but as it stands, the wild card in the NFC North are going to be hosting the Chargers, most likely hosting the Chargers. The division winners will be hosting the Chargers, and the losers at the moment will travel to Houston. I'm just wondering which game would you prefer? I know which one I prefer at the moment anyway, but I don't think any team would want the bad karma that would go along with like a mini tank or a strategic loss or anything like that. I don't think that's going to be the case, but it's just one that they may have in the back of their mind as well. But no, I think the Ravens get it done comfortably this weekend.
No, and of course we can't underestimate how important home field advantage is, which of course is something that the Ravens didn't quite use to their full advantage last year against the Chiefs. But no, when we're looking at this matchup, I'll say beforehand, it's because the Ravens really need to get this done, and there's a lot of confidence they can get it done. The 18-point spread is a reflection of that. But is there any hint of an upset happening here? What way do you look at this?
Well, one of the three games that the Browns won this season was against the Ravens, so what I mean, that's a distant memory. No, look, the spread says it all. I mean, Kieran's covered a lot of it there in terms of Lamar Jackson. He has a chance in the MVP. I know that's not going to be foremost in his minds, but still it's there that he has a chance to go out and just top up those stats that he's put up this year against a really poor Browns team who at this stage are done with the season. Like you'd be very, very surprised. I know the Ravens throughout the course of the season have had a couple of blips that you just didn't see coming, the Browns being one of them. I think the Raiders at one point. But we're deep into the business end of everything now. They've spent the season kind of getting ready and fine-tuning everything, and you don't see them now slip into a Browns team. And then you said it as well. I mean, I know the Chargers on paper feels like a tougher game than the Texans team that's really been struggling, but it's that home field advantage you want as well that comes with that. So I can't see any scenario where the Browns get anything out of this game whatsoever.
Florida, Kieran, what way do you look at this?
Well, I just saw a few minutes ago that the Browns were planning on using Bailey Zappi for this game, so that tells me all I need to know. This is going to be. I mean, whoever's out there for I mean, you could put Joe Flacco from 10 years ago back out there for the Ravens, and they beat this Browns team right now. So it's not going to be close.
I wish Joe Flacco was
if the Ravens started the starters, do you think if by halftime the game is done, they just say, right, that's enough and change it there? Because look, as Kieran said, you can't see them not winning this game no matter who's out there playing.
No, I imagine the game plan is to try and shut things down as early as possible. Don't even give them the chance to upset and make the Pittsburgh game later on easily. And that's the way I think it's going to go. I think the Ravens are going to win that one. And on Saturday night at 1:10 a.m. Irish time is the probably more interesting of the two AFC North matchups as the Cincinnati Bengals travel to Pittsburgh to play against the Steelers. The Steelers, of course, coming off 3 defeats in a row and not really in a fantastic run of form. The Cincinnati Bengals getting a tremendous victory against the Browns last week have still put them in playoff contention. Interesting, the placement of this game, Florida, Kieran, is that because by the time when this game kicks off, we'll know what the story is of the Ravens. It will affect the mentality of the Steelers going into this. Whereas the Bengals, as we know, regardless of what's happening, needs to go for this from start to finish. Do you like how much in that mentality battle do you think is going to affect how this game goes? Because if we saw earlier on this year, when this game was an absolute shootout, I think it was 44-38 that Pittsburgh won a few weeks ago at the start of December. You know, the aggression of these two teams to go at each other is something which is very rarely dampened.
Yeah, I can't see a situation where the Steelers put up the amount of points they did in that game. I just think that the Bengals right now are in full playoff mode, despite the fact they haven't got there yet. That win last week has given them a huge amount of energy. You know, and it's almost like that was their wild card game, and now they're moving on to the division game. It's just everything we saw from that game, all the energy, all the kind of congratulatory kind of vibes they got from that game is going to carry them through this. Like I said, Steelers are coming off 3 losses. Bengals are on the hot on the heels of 4 wins in a row. Joe Burrow is just playing lights out. It's almost like the Steelers are out of the playoffs. That's kind of how the vibe is right now. They're not doing anything right now to give their fans any kind of hope. But the Bengals are, despite the fact they have a huge obstacle to get in there. I mean, they need the Jets to lose. I mean, the Jets to beat Miami, and then they need the Broncos to lose to the Chiefs. So everything's stacked up against the Bengals. So they're just going to go, balls to the wall, go all out. Burrow is probably going to throw for about 400. I can't see the Steelers matching, despite, we all know the Bengals' defensive deficiencies, but I can't see the Steelers matching Burrow's talent level, matching the skill level of the skill players he has. I mean, Jaylen Warren has been almost taken over a running back from Najee Harris. So that's, if it's going to be a one and done almost for the Steelers, I think, in the playoffs. But I think that the Bengals have got so much with them, and the energy from last week's game is going to carry them through to this. I think it'd be great if they were in the playoffs. I think a lot of people would be the same way. I just think there's one loss too many. That Patriots loss in September is looming large for them right now. But I think everybody would love to see them in the playoffs, and I think they're just going to put up 40. I think the Steelers team is on the ropes right now, struggling to score points, and I think the Bengals are going to put up 40. I really do.
Yeah, I look at this kind of similarly because these are two teams going in very different directions. And if you're looking for a get right for Pittsburgh, you're not going to find it against a team who have everything to fight for and have every reason to believe that they can put up points. Because Joe Burrow, as we know, last week got over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's had 3 touchdowns in each of the last 8 games. T. Higgins has scored in 6 of the last 7. Mike Gesicki's playing well. And even though he took 7 sacks against Denver last week, it just doesn't affect him. And that's against a defense in Pittsburgh that got no sacks against Kansas City, and their pass rush has not been what it was in the early part of the year. We talk about the strengths of Pittsburgh over the course of the season. It's never always been on offense. Sure, when Russell Wilson came in, they had a few weeks where maybe it wasn't a flash in the plan, but it certainly looked like a much stronger offensive output. But now that steam was run out a little bit, you're looking back to the Pittsburgh defense and being like, okay, can we lean on you guys the same way that we were able to lean on you in the earlier part of the season? And I just don't see it happening. in a situation when the Pittsburgh offense can't score more than 18 points, which is the case in the last 3 games. Now, those 3 games were against the Ravens, Eagles, and Chiefs. That's elite opposition. But the Bengals are elite opposition as well, and I don't see too much changing. If you're looking for a shootout as happened earlier this season, I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing a Bengals team being a much stronger position. And look, if we're going on the assumption, as I am, that the Ravens do win the earlier game, it will affect, I think, how much the Steelers will be able to fight. That if they go 10 to 14 points down in the second half, are they going to keep all their players on so they can try and mount a comeback, or they're just going to take the L, keep their players fresh and deal with it? And, you know, that's what's going to happen. It's just the nature of Week 18 that they're not going to go all guns blazing. They'll certainly try from the start, and both teams will try. They get on top of things, but the Pittsburgh defense isn't playing good defense against the passing game, and that Cincinnati passing game is just unbelievably good. We'll go to Kieran and Cork now for your pick.
I've been manifesting the Bengals now for the Bengals for the last 5 or 6 weeks. I think I have a lot of credit to take for this resurgence and for this. The fact that they're still alive, I think they'll do their bit. It might be a bit of a stretch to think that the other scenarios might play out, but no, I think the Bengals do their part this weekend.
Yeah, hold up their end of the bargain and lead themselves to a very nervy Sunday to look ahead. No, what way do you look at this?
Yeah, it's the same for me. I think the Steelers team just feel like they're going in the wrong direction at the wrong time, and this Bengals team are fighting for that absolutely slim piece of hope that's still there for a playoff berth. And I think they have an offense that can go out and cause real trouble for the Steelers, and I think they'll get the win.
It's amazing how the Steelers haven't had a good December. You know, it's not some sort of Croke Park curse or anything like that. I'm not quite sure. I'll wait to look at that one. We move on to the Sunday games, which kick off at 6 o'clock. The first one that we will talk about, the first pair of games, we'll talk about is the race for the NFC South title. The first one we'll touch on, Kieran in Cork, is Panthers at Falcons. Falcons coming to this as 8-point favorites. I think the interesting aspect of this is the last time these two teams played, it was Andy Dalton and Kirk Cousins on the field. Now it's going to be Bryce Young and Michael Penix Jr., 2 young quarterbacks. And I think the fact that this game is maybe out of the limelight a little bit, unlike the last 2 games the Falcons played, such as their primetime game against the Commanders, might give Penix a bit more room to find that kind of breakout game that he and his career have been looking for. Plus the fact that the Falcons really need to put the pressure on. They're playing at the same time the Buccaneers are. They don't know what the situation is in Tampa Bay, but they really need to hold up their end of the bargain if they're going to have a chance of seeing that final playoff spot. And I think there is definitely a feeling out there that Penix might be able to find a bit more room against his Panthers team than he has in the last 2 games that he's played. What way do you look at this?
Yeah, well, look, as we know, the Bucs wrestled back control of the division last week. I always find these games interesting when you're playing at the same time as another game that that you're depending on a result to go. What's the team strategy? Do you kind of keep one ear on what's going on, or do you try and shut out the noise and just go to the final whistle and find out your fate when it's all over? I'd imagine for an NFL team that'd be very hard with so many people on the roster and and so much noise in the stadium. The news would have to be traveling, I think, throughout. Look, Michael Penix's stats weren't brilliant against the Commanders, but it was a highly entertaining game, and he had his part to play in it as well. Look, he was able to lead the touchdown drive when it was needed to get the game to overtime. And so, look, there's some positive mentality there, or some leadership qualities there on show for Michael Penix. So I think that they're going to go into this game with plenty of hope, and it is a game that that they'll feel that they should win. One of the biggest stats that I took away last week are like, I suppose the negatives for Genie Mac. I'm shutting down altogether. For the Falcons, they gave up 216 yards on the ground. And if Chuba Hubbard was playing this weekend, I'd say that's a worry for you. But with Chuba Hubbard injured, I think the Panthers are they're far more limited than they were. We talk about Thielen and his resurgence, and Bryce Young and how he's been playing well and how they've been playing hard for Dave Canales. But with the season on the line, I think the Falcons they do have enough in the tank. I think you're right. I think this is a game where Michael Penix could come into his own, could really he may throw up some stats, and I've mentioned before they have the weapons for him. They have London, Pitts, Mooney, McLeod. They've all contributed, fairly well throughout the season. yeah, look, this is week 18 for the Panthers. We talked about how they've I suppose they've played hard for their coach, but no, I think there's too much on the line here for the Falcons, and I do think they'll get over the line. And as I said, like the Commanders team that they played, they're on a resurgence again. Last week they had a little bit of a dip, but I think they finished strong as well. And Jaden Daniels has been outstanding. So to run them so close last week will give them hope as well going into this game. And I think they get it done.
Listen, by the way, don't be apologising, Kieran. There's no problem with ever having football fever on this show. If we're all come down with a dose at this time of year. I'm looking at this game, and I know that the last couple of weeks I've probably given the Panthers a bit more of a chance in my own head than the fact they do have on the field. And I think last week the how badly that secondary dealt with the Buccaneers really showed that up. Now, in fairness, the Buccaneers did play a very good game. I don't know how much shame you could have when you give up 500 plus yards and 5 passing touchdowns to a Buccaneers team who, when they click, they just know when to click. But my problem with the Panthers is that outside of Young and Adam Thielen, who connected for a couple of touchdowns, they have a pretty decent thing going on offense. I'm not sure what more I can really expect from them to challenge. And look, if Atlanta manages to find a way to score 17 points, that's enough. Because I don't think the Panthers are going to score more than that. It's the game is matters a lot more for one team than the other. You have to wonder. Yes, there's going to be individuals in the Panthers side who will be playing for their jobs, but how much are the team going to be playing? It was different, I think, in the previous year or in previous weeks when they needed to prove to the world that they weren't walkovers. But this is the final game of the season. Things are maybe starting to wind down a little bit for the Panthers, and Falcons are coming to this 8-point favorites. Even if they don't cover that spread, I still fancy them to do it. And I fancy Michael Penix as well to play a tidy game. I don't think he'll throw in a deception. He may not sort of ball out, but I think it'll be close enough. No.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the Falcons, they still have something to play for. They have some good, exciting young players there who, if they play well, can win. I think the Panthers had a decent upturn in the second half of the season, but they're still not a good team. And week 18, and they've got nothing really going for them. I just think the Falcons will win.
And Kieran?
Yeah, Panthers. They got blown away by Tampa. They don't have Chuba Hubbard out there. If they had him out there, I might give him a bit of a chance, but I think this Falcons team, player to player, is too strong.
For our Florida resident, I'm going to stick with you, Kieran, as the Saints play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa, or in St. Petersburg, sorry. It's a 13-point favorite tag going on Tampa Bay. Look, considering how strong their offense played last year and they're playing against a Saints team who are not long off after getting shut out against the Green Bay Packers, it's quite simply a case of a massive gap in talent going up, with one team knowing full well that if they win this game during the playoffs, it's as simple as that. Is there any hint of New Orleans doing something here, or what way do you look at Tampa Bay here?
Look, if the Buccaneers at this stage of the season can't beat the Saints, then they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. I think it's that simple. It's, again, we're going, just like I mentioned before, it goes talent-wise. On the offensive side, Jalen McMillan, Mike Evans, Rashad White, Bucky Irving. On the defense, you have Vita Vea, KJ Britt, Kalaji Kansi. These are guys who are strong enough to have a good run in the playoffs. The Saints are beat up. Spencer Rattler is scheduled to play, I think, but David Carr might come on. We don't know yet. Alvin Kamara's got an issue. Chris Olave might play. So there's a lot of questions with the Saints. I'll give Carr credit. He could just wrap it up and say, you know what, I'm gonna put everything back into storage until the summer to training camp. But he's looking to get out there. Whether he does or not, I'm not sure. Even if he does, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Tampa's at home. Tampa's got everything going in their favor. They rode out that wave during the middle part of the season where they had those injuries. They absorbed all that. I think they're a better team than Atlanta right now. Baker's just been great. I mean, he's another couple of touchdowns and he'd be in the MVP race. He's got 39 already. An issue, and we don't have to go into it now, but further into the playoffs is going to be his interception issue. But we'll get a chance to get to that later. They have a few injury issues. Cade Otton, I saw Winfield Jr. might be questionable too. But again, put both teams up against each other. Tampa, they're a 13-point favorite. I'd be surprised if they don't win by more than that.
No, when these two teams played against each other in October, it was a very dramatic game because Tampa Bay ended up going 17-0 up. New Orleans came back and eventually were 27-24 up at halftime, and then Tampa Bay won by a score of 51-27. Can we expect similar fireworks here, or will it be more straightforward than that?
think you could expect similar fireworks in terms of the Tampa Bay offense and put up maybe not 51 this time, but I mean, they put up 40 plus in 2 of the last 3 games. I think this is Kieran's mentioned it, this is a Saints team that is done now. A quarterback, there'll be questions no matter who plays. I think there'll be issues. Kamara is not playing. I mean, he's obviously a big part of that offense. And they just have, it's like a lot of these games, the Saints have nothing in this game, and they're going through such a tough time at the moment anyway, whereas the Bucs have the faith in their own hands. Their offense, over the last few weeks, when they need to, can really put up points. Kieran's mentioned all the players. I mean, it's 2 teams in very, very different places, and the Bucs team is a much better team top to bottom anyway, and that's before you even take into account the Saints injuries or players who may be missing. So I can't say it's another one of these games where I think the team that has something to play for is the better team anyway, and I think they'll go out and do the job, and they're just good enough against a poor team, I think, at this point in the season.
Right, what say the Cork delegation?
No, I think I agree with you all, guys. The Bucs are going to get it done. I think they'll do it quite comprehensively as well.
Yeah, I've little to add. Only I think the Bucs are going to win this one big time. That's it for our first segment. We'll come back and we'll talk about some of the other big clashes after this. Welcome back to part 2 of the Irish NFL Show's preview of Week 18, the final week of regular season of 2024/2025 action. We're going to spin through quickly 2 games on the NFC side of things, which count for wildcard positioning and wildcard positioning only, because as it stands, both the Packers and the Commanders are 11-5, but the Commanders are currently in the 6th seed and the Panthers in the 7th seed. That could change depending on results this weekend, considering we have both the Packers and a Bears fan. The supposed greatest rivalry in the league, so we're being told, even though results on the field don't always reflect that, as both of these teams match up. Might spin this through this one quickly enough, because the Packers are 10-point favorites at home, Kieran, in Cork. These divisional rivalry games always bring up banana skins, but I don't know how people in Green Bay feel about this particular matchup, whether the Bears pose too much of a threat to them right now.
Yeah, it's strange, because usually you'd be so hyped up for the Bears Packers on both sides of the coin, but I think the Packers are coming off a really disappointing loss last week, a really deflating loss. And I was listening to you guys earlier on in the week, and Kieran, I think you rightly said that if you were a Packers fan now, you'd be anxious going into the playoffs, and that's exactly how I feel. Just kind of feels at the moment that they can beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, and with all due respect, Noel, I think they're going to beat the Bears, or they should be able to beat the Bears, but I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make. I think that they'll have an eye on the Commanders game, obviously, and if the Commanders take care of the Cowboys, that's it. They're heading to Philadelphia, and that's a really, really daunting prospect at the moment. So, look, I think they get this. I think they should get this one done, depending on how the other game is going. Like if the Commanders are blowing out the Cowboys, you never know. LaFleur might start pulling a few starters and say it doesn't really make much of a difference. But yeah, going forward, it just is a bit concerning for the Packers at the moment. You're just looking at how damaging was that game last week mentally, and even from a standing point of view, because maybe I was giving too much credit to the Packers a few weeks ago, but I think I was more likely not giving enough credit to the Commanders, and assuming that they wouldn't win out. We were talking about potentially the difference between a 5 and 6 seed, and they've slipped away down into 7th here, and they're as it stands, they're 0-5 against what we would probably all agree are the 3 best teams in the NFC. And they're possibly the 3 teams that they'd come up against again. So what's the likelihood that they're going to beat all 3 of them, or at least 2? And then you're looking at on the other side of the coin, the Bears. I think it's probably a case of let's get out of here, and let's look towards next season. And I think one lesson that can be learned from this year is that, look, I think there's plenty of reason to believe that Caleb Williams can be a quarterback for the future. But I think when you look at the likes of Sam Darnold going to the Vikings, I think it's clear to see that the situation that you put a quarterback in and the I suppose the culture that you create around him is far more important than individual talent. And they'll hope to bring in the right personnel. And Noel, you're probably better placed to speak on who you'd like to see taking the reins next year. But I do think there's hope for the Bears behind Caleb Williams.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, of course, going into this matchup, Noel, because if the Bears want to do the thing which will definitely give them and the people of Chicago a lot of pride, they'll go into this, they'll get the victory. This is all that matters now. They've nothing to fight for in the end of the season. And they're coming to this with a little bit of extra rest as well, because they played the Thursday night the previous week, I suppose, on the weekend. You could argue that after underscoring 3 points, that maybe the offense took a rest during that game as well. So is there much sense of energy? Is there much sense of a belief they can go into Lambeau and sort of pull off an upset here?
No, I don't think there's any. I mean, obviously, look, at the end of the day, Ciara mentions that Caleb is the big thing for the Bears now to concentrate on, and obviously beating the Packers still is. It's a rivalry for the Bears still. It may not be as much for the Packers anymore when you look at results, but they will want to go in and try and rescue the most minuscule little piece of a victory this season, which would be beating the Packers in Lambeau. But you can't see it. I mean, the Bears are on a 10-game losing streak. They're on an 11-game losing streak to the Packers, and I don't see that getting changed this weekend. The whole club at the moment feels like it's in a bit of a tailspin. There's coaching issues, which, Eberflus left, and the same coaching issues were still evident in the last game with the coaches who have come in. And at the moment, the Bears just feel like, let's get the season over with. Let's reassess. Let's work on this new coaching staff and head coach. Still questions going around about Ryan Poles, the GM, which I think he will stay, but still that's something that's come up recently. So I think this weekend, I can't give them any hope at all. They've been playing really, really bad. I know they put it up to the NFC North rivals 3 games in a row, and they were very close in each game, but that's faded away since they played the Vikings and the Lions since. And I think this weekend will just be another one where they're a poor team, low on confidence, going up against a Packers team who, okay, you mentioned they beat the teams they're supposed to beat. Maybe there's questions about going into the playoffs. I still think when you hit the playoffs, it's one and done. You just need, you need those young players to have one really good game, and whoever you're playing, maybe on the night you get that win. So if I was a Packers fan, I would have hope going in, because you never know what's going to happen in knockout football. But this weekend, I think we all know exactly what's going to happen, and it's going to be a resounding Packers victory over a Bears team that just really need the season to end now.
Yeah, I'm going for a Packers victory here because, as we were discussing earlier, the Packers lose to good teams and the Bears aren't one. Kieran, how do you look at this?
I mean, I've been trying to think of ways that the Bears are going to win and look at ways that they'd be able to get a win. But again, it's a season they just want to finish. I'd like to see a bit more competitive than it would be, but I think it's definitely going to be Packers.
Right, we won't stay too long on the battle between the Commanders and the Cowboys in Arlington, Texas. Interesting, the last time these two teams played, it was a sort of surprise victory when Cooper Kupp was playing under center for the Cowboys. They won 34-26, I think in week 12 it was, but slightly different connotations now. The Cowboys, if they get a win here, it might affect the conversation we're going to have later in terms of Mike McCarthy's job security. The Commanders, they win this, they seal the number 6 seed. It's already great enough that they are going into the playoffs. And look, there's a lot of players there who want to keep billing their stats. We know that Jayden Daniels has already gotten the record for the most rushing yards by a rookie in the season. Kieran Boyle, you're the NFC East sort of correspondent here. It's an interesting one for both of these teams. I think weirdly, as much as the Commanders obviously they have something to fight for, I think and here in Ireland anyway, the Cowboys haven't really been on people's radars. They've kind of slipped under the radar. We haven't talked about them much. The fact that they've been getting better results since Cooper Rush has come under center, and since their season was over, they've ended up playing kind of decent in the end. I just wonder whether that sense of pride or sense of fighting for the coach, sense of fighting for your jobs might actually make this game a little bit more interesting than people might anticipate.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to bring up. I think this is going to be the closest of all the divisional games that we have this weekend. We know the Cowboys are terrible at home. That's not a secret, but there's something to be said for playing for the head coach. Everyone's been saying since last year that McCarthy's on the hot seat, that he's done. So I think that some of the players are going to go all out and kind of play for him, because he is a player's coach, despite what other stuff comes out of the press. But I think a lot of people are going to play hard for him, and I think Washington will come away with this. But I think the Cowboys are going to run them real close, despite the fact that there's no Dak, there's no CeeDee Lamb, Zeke has been let go. So basically, you're looking at Rico Dowdle as the Cowboys' offense, which is pretty bizarre when you think about it. But they still have people like Tolbert, Brandon Cooks. I think it's going to be one of those games. But Washington expended a lot of energy last week in getting past Atlanta, and I don't want to call it a letdown or a one of those kind of games. But the Cowboys will always play hard, no matter on the road or at home. And I think this is going to be the closest one of the weekend. I think it's probably going to be a low scoring, probably in the teens, this game. I think this, after the heroics of last week with Jaden Daniels and, offensive rookie of the year talk and all that kind of stuff, I think not a letdown, but it's going to be a kind of a bit of a lull after all that stuff. But, saying that, I think they will pull out a win by 3 points. But Cowboys will try and end their season on a high, but they just won't have enough in the end.
Yeah, I'm gonna sort of go along very similar lines to you, Kieran. I think when you look at this game, the Commanders have a penchant for sort of these late game scores. We know that Jaden Daniels has scored 5 touchdowns in the last 30 seconds of games so far this season. They find ways to pull things out in the end if things are kept close, and I think this definitely will be kept close because of the nature of how these teams will play. But I just can't bring myself to say that Jaden Daniels won't find a way to get past the defense that last week gave up an average of 10 yards per pass to Kenny Pickett and I can't even remember the name of the other Philadelphia quarterback, but fair enough. Like obviously, the quality, Tanner McKee, of course. Thank you very much. But obviously, the quality of Philly versus the quality of Washington, and the whole home away thing. I understand the caveats in that difference, but if someone's going to win this game by a field goal, I'm sort of flipping a coin and giving it to the Commanders. Noah, what way do you look at this?
Yeah, I agree with yourself. I think the Commanders just find ways to win, even if it's late in games, as we've seen a number of times. I think Jaden Daniels does change games when he's in that kind of form. And I mean, the Cowboys have had a rough season. I know things have kind of perked up a little bit for them. They've got some wins, but I think the Commanders are just going to have enough to win this weekend.
And Kieran?
Yeah, well, when I finally got over my brain freeze there, I got the rushing stats out for the Commanders. But interestingly, Jaden Daniels accounted for 127 of those last week. It just shows he's the guy that's going to get it done for them, fully deserving of his rookie Pro Bowl spot this week. So I think he's the man that gets them over the line. And I agree with Kieran. I think the Cowboys will play the Commanders hard, and I think they'll play hard in the final week and play hard for Mike McCarthy. But no, I think the Commanders are finishing strong.
Right, moving to the 9 o'clock window now, and the big race in the 9 o'clock window is the race for that last AFC wildcard spot. We know, and the Bengals will know where they're sitting after Saturday night. But for the Bengals to make it, they need both the Broncos and the Dolphins to lose. So we're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins traveling to the New York Jets first. Dolphins are coming to this as 1-point favorites, which does not shock me because when these two teams played in the lovely warm weather of South Florida, they had to go to overtime before the Dolphins eventually got it done. And the Jets here, of course, potentially playing their last game with Aaron Rodgers under center, and all the Aaron Rodgers crew that came into the club might want to find his way to end the season on a high against a Dolphins team who we know, and we've spoken about so many times about their reliance so much on Tua Tagovailoa. But I think the big thing for them is the fact that Achane has come on as the season has gone on. I mean, like, how much can you trust a team which is 4-12 and has been inconsistent throughout so much of the year to try to even replicate what they did? Was it 4 weeks ago? The game that was on in Buskers on the Ball when the Dolphins played the Jets a few weeks ago. Do you trust the Jets to replicate that strong performance? And they didn't even get over the line there. They were ahead, and eventually the defense wasn't strong enough, and the Dolphins engineered a way back into the game, knowing full well that the Dolphins have a proper thing to play for here. Do you trust the Jets? Do you trust Aaron Rodgers to get up after getting sacks? Because if you take a lot of sacks, he took 4 sacks against Buffalo last week, and even as far back as the game in Tottenham, what we saw, every sack he takes, it just takes him a little bit longer to get back up. We saw that against the Dolphins last time out. We saw it against the Bills last week. in a game where the Jets did not look like they had any strengths at all. And sure enough, the Dolphins aren't the Bills, and they're coming into New York, and we talk so much about cold weather and Miami's ability to get things done, and we know that there's a big Arctic chill coming across the American continent this weekend. So the weather in East Rutherford is going to be pretty cold. Not quite Arrowhead in the playoffs last year for the Dolphins, but I don't know. I just don't see the offense on the Jets getting enough consistency to outscore whatever the Dolphins put up. Because if the Dolphins put up 14, 17 points, Tua manages to find Tyreek Hill for an explosive 50-yard pass, Devon Achane manages to keep things rolling, and they get a field goal at some point in the game. Do I think Aaron Rodgers and co. is going to be able to outscore that? Simple answer is no. And I think the so-called best 2 years of Aaron Rodgers' life, according to himself, I think is going to end on a bit of a whimper here. So that's the way I look at this. Kieran and Cork, how do you look at this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just checking with you there, Shane. Is it Tua that's supposed to start, or is Tyler Huntley starting? I had it that Tyler Huntley was to start.
Yeah, Huntley's going to be starting.
Yeah, it was doubtful that Tua was going to start, and that kind of makes that kind of shifts it for me a little bit. I actually see an upset on the cards here. Looking at the Dolphins last week, Huntley wasn't terrible himself. He rushed for 52 yards and a touchdown. He had a decent passer rating, 115, but they only managed to rush for 74 net yards. Against the Browns. So like the Dolphins, the Dolphins have been terrible as terrible as the Jets have been. The fact that the Dolphins are only a point favorite with all to play for this week is telling enough that even the bookies don't trust the Dolphins to get over the line here and do it comprehensively. Look, this game is all about the Dolphins on paper because the Dolphins have hope. We all know that Aaron Rodgers lives in his own head. So for Aaron Rodgers, this game is going to be all about him and his swan song and his potential exit from the Jets. And he's going to want to have maybe one last day in the sun with Davante Adams before they're run out of town. I think, again, look, I know the narrative has been swinging over the last few weeks, but it's looking more likely that there won't be a place for Rodgers in the Jets next year. He's one touchdown away from 500. He's 9 or 10 away from Brett Favre, and I'm not exactly too sure how many. But I suppose the upside to being, I don't want to be too harsh, but such an egomaniac is that you can have a very short memory, and he'll still fully believe that he's capable, and he has shown flashes of it throughout the season. So for a meaningless game for the Jets and for Jets fans, I think Aaron Rodgers will go into his own bubble here, and he might just do enough to spoil the weekend for the Dolphins. And this is part of my manifestation for the Bengals as well. It has to happen for me to have been right all along. So I'm actually going to give the upset to the Jets here on this one.
Yeah, apologies on that one. You're right. It is going to be Tyler Huntley. I just wonder though, with Huntley starting a quarterback, does that mean that the Jets are less likely to get a turnover? Because we know he's more of a rushing type quarterback. He doesn't try and force things down the field. And considering that it's going to be a physical type game, I'm still sticking with my Dolphins prediction. We'll go to Kieran in Florida. And by the way, for anybody watching, that is not a Jets jersey he's wearing. That green collar is Notre Dame green, Joe Montana green as well, in case anybody thinks that their screens are going off. Dolphins, Jets, Kieran, how do you look at this?
Not only is this a green jersey for Notre Dame throwback, but I'm also going to say something earth-shattering. You ready? I have the Jets in Aaron Rodgers' final game for the Jets and Davante Adams' last game for the Jets. I have Aaron Rodgers and the Jets winning by 10.
Winning by 10?
Winning by 10. I think it's going to be 23. It's going to feel like 23 degrees in East Rutherford on Sunday. The Dolphins cannot play in anything less than 60. Kind of like myself playing golf. There is no, I'm telling you, this is going to be the upset of the weekend. Rodgers, like you said, this is all about him. It's about his ego. It's about his status. He has already scripted this in his head. He's going to go out there, guns blazing, Brett Favre-like, and he's going to light it up. Davante Adams is going to light it up. This is the Jets that have been stuttering all season. This is the upset. Jets beat Dolphins. There it is.
That's one for the history books, folks. That is Jets by 10, and Aaron Rodgers pulling off a fair performance from Kieran Boyle there. No, come on. Are you all? Is everyone else on the Jets on the Jets hype train today? Am I the only one seeing the Dolphins might find a way to sneak into the playoffs? Because maybe a bit like Kieran, I might be manifesting my preseason predictions that the Dolphins could actually make the playoffs, which definitely was proven wrong. No, what way do you look at this?
I have no idea. If I had a coin here, I'd flip it and see which way it went. I don't trust either of these teams, but look, if Kieran is going for the Jets, I'm going to go with the Jets. No. Look, I think the Jets are home. I don't trust the Dolphins. Then you drop down from 2. I actually like Huntley as a backup quarterback, but I think going into New York with the last game potentially for Rodgers, I think him and Adams have looked good at times over the last few weeks. I think they just have enough at home against the Dolphins team, which this season really has been a disappointment for a lot of it. Look, it could easily go the other way, but I think I'm going to give the home team the nod.
The Jets getting revenge for the Dolphins managed to get an overtime win that night when we saw them in Dublin. Well, in terms of if the Dolphins do lose, it is definitely good news to the Bengals. But if the Dolphins win, regardless of what happens either way, they are really the main game where everybody's looking at in the AFC side of the draw is the Kansas City Chiefs. They travel to Denver. Denver have had the last 2 games to seal their playoff spot. They haven't been able to get the job done. They come to this as 10-point favorites because Andy Reid has confirmed today that a lot of the Chiefs starters, including Patrick Mahomes, will not be playing this game. Kieran in Florida, this game, the Broncos have every right to go out and win this. They have every right to go out and win this. But the Chiefs, with their starters on the field, albeit, have found ways to prove us wrong where we think that they might not be able to perform in a way strong enough. How do you look at this game?
Well, like you said, the Chiefs are resting everybody. I mean, they gave the equipment manager the weekend off. I think they've closed schools for the week in Kansas City. I think they're just letting everybody rest for the week. And Carson Wentz is coming in, and Carson Wentz, I've watched him live a couple of times, and that's a tough watch. They're probably going to put out Juju Smith-Schuster, probably bring Hollywood Brown and get him some reps, but it's going to be all the backups. They're not going to play with anything. I mean, Mahomes is going to have 3 weeks off after this, so they're just going to cool out, and it's all, like you said, it's all set up for the Broncos. I can't see a situation, despite the fact that it's the name of Kansas City. It's almost like Manchester United playing the 3rd-string team in the FA Cup way back in the day. It's still the name, but they're not going to be able to get over the hump. The Broncos have to be playing with their hair on fire. Sean Payton's been, working them up all week, drilling into them the mistakes they made last week. Some of them were his. But Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton, players of that ilk are going to just, they're going to be too much for the backups for Kansas City. Kansas City are not going to play around with anything. They know that they have destiny and history looking them right in the mouth for a 3rd successive Super Bowl. They're not going to play any kind of games or look fate in the eye or anything like that. I fully expect Denver to just, Bo Nix was great last week too. I fully expect them to just go out and do the job that they needed to do last week. And now that they hear that, Kansas City's resting pretty much everybody, I think they're going to go in. They're going to go in Denver, and they're going to get the win that they need, and it should be enough for them.
No, it will be the first time since 2015 that the Broncos will make it into the playoffs again, but not being able to get the job done the last 2 times. I think the fact that it's going to be played in Denver, there's definitely going to be a lot of nerves heading into this game, but it definitely seems like the fact that the Chiefs are resting their starters means the Broncos have probably caught a bit of a break here.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. The schedule has fallen really, really nice for them in terms of this now, and the Chiefs wrapping up the way they did the season. But I agree with everything Kieran said. I think you're going to be looking at a Denver Broncos team with their destiny in their own hands, with everything to play for, going up against the Chiefs 3rd string. It's just going to be, especially in Denver, that's just kind of, more than tips the scales. The way that the Chiefs are going to come into this tips the scales, and then at home is like the icing on the top. I mean, I think this Denver team is going to be too strong. This is a really good defense. All season it's been a really good defense. I think they're the sack leaders in the NFL, so they're going to get after Carson Wentz, who's going to have a lot of backups in front of him. Look, it would want to be some amount of nerves that would knock this Denver team out and cause them to lose this game. As we say, look, it's just, they've played hard all season. The schedule has given them a nice little kind of a boost at the end. I think the Chiefs have done what they've done. They've done everything they needed. They're going to get that much needed rest now and be ready to go into playoffs. And I think this Broncos team will be in the playoffs as well, because I just think there's too much on the line for them this week, and they're going to be too strong against what the Chiefs are going to put out.
Kieran O'Donovan, shocking the Cards or Broncos in the playoffs? Because if you're manifesting the Bengals, Surely you're manifesting a defeat here, no? Is that how it's going?
Well, I think this is the one that's most likely to end the dream for the Bengals. The only thing I will say is, like you talked about nerves. I think just like a Bill Belichick Patriots team, I think these Kansas City Chiefs under Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, they're going to be well prepared situationally, no matter who's playing for them, and they're going to play hard. And there's going to be guys on the field playing for their careers, trying to put their hand up. Is Carson Wentz starting? Is he? Yeah,
Carson Wentz starting quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah.
2017, he was short odds for an MVP. I mean, there's still talent there, even though his career has fallen away off. But that's the only thing. And if the Chiefs can get a good start, as you said, put pressure on the young quarterback and make him nervous. You never know what way it's going to go, but I do think this is the one that's going to end it for the Bengals. I think it's a bit of a stretch, so I think the Broncos get it done.
Hear me out. Think about this for a second, right? Somebody in the AFC West has to take on the Chargers' role of being the perennial butlers, because the Chargers now have managed to find a way to keep things on track. They're going to the playoffs. They're playing pretty good football with Jim Harbaugh. They're the best defense in the league. The Broncos have had 2 goals to get this done. They're playing at home, which I actually think is a disadvantage in this case, because all it takes is for a sloppy start, for Bo Nix to throw a sloppy interception, for the ball to slip out, for a special teams play to come in good for the Chiefs, and people start feeling a bit shaky. Oh, maybe this isn't going to be as easy as we thought we were. And Andy Reid is 2-2 when he's using these his backups. There's a similar situation a few years ago against the San Diego Chargers, where the Chiefs, were playing a lot of backup players and still managed to get the job done pretty easily. I think a bit like yourself, it's a similar aura to the Belichick Patriots in their prime. You can never take these guys for granted. And the Chiefs, as we know, have always found ways situationally to get things done, to get things over the line, even though they have nothing to play for. They have absolutely nothing to play for. They're locked down for the top seed. This is a rivalry which they've had control of, a lot of control of in the last couple years.
They've one small bit of history to play for. No team has ever won 16 games and won the Super Bowl. And it's maybe, I don't know how small that is in their minds, but it would be history.
I think for the competitors in that locker room, that's enough. That's enough. And look, all it takes is for 1 point to be the difference in a game like this. And I've no statistical reasons to back this up. I'm just getting a feeling that the Broncos are probably a bit more shaky coming into this than a lot of people give them credit for. Maybe I'm being crazy. Maybe I'm trying to make up for the fact that I'm falling slightly behind on our picks graphics every week. But I oddly, even though I've backed against the Chiefs so much this year, I'm putting them in the win column this week. Right, we're going to move on to probably the best game, the biggest game of the week this week, as the Minnesota Vikings travel to play against the Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football. I imagine a lot of people on this side of the Atlantic will be staying up late to watch this one, because the stakes could not be higher for a regular season game. It's the reason why it is game number 272. Winner, it becomes the NFC number 1 seed, wins the division, gets the week off, and make sure that all playoff teams has to run through them. Loser is the number 5 seed in the NFC, and that means, at least for the first week anyway, they're going to be playing on the road. And we'll go to you, Kieran, in Florida first. We speak so much about the Vikings. They're on a hot streak. They've won the last 9 in a row. We've spoken so much about the Lions this year because of how good they have just generally been all season long. I think there's a sense that this game might be a bit of a shootout. It was 31 to 29, when these guys played against each other in week 7. Ended up being a field goal that won it in Minnesota. Now we're back in Detroit. I think a lot of people are expecting this one to be a high-scoring, close game. But what way do you look at this? I imagine yourself, like a lot of people who've been consuming a lot of American sports media over the week, would have a take on this.
Yeah, I think it will be high scoring. And I think when you look at the 2 teams, I mean, you got Ben Johnson going up against Brian Flores. I just think that the Lions, after watching them against San Francisco brought everything. San Francisco played like it was a playoff game, and they still couldn't get over the line. But it's just the pure offense that the Lions bring is just phenomenal. I think that's going to cover a lot of the deficiencies that they currently have on defense, despite the fact that looks like they could get one of the best linebackers, Alex Anzalone, back for this weekend. And even Hutchinson, if they get that far in the Super Bowl. I just think that despite the deficiencies they have on defense, their ability to put up such big points is going to hold in their favor. And I think when you kind of stack up both offenses, the Lions have got them. They have just the better players. I mean, Justin Jefferson is great. Addison's a nice addition, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, players like that. I mean, that hook and ladder play on Monday night was just phenomenal. It was just a beautiful thing to see. And I think it's going to be a high scoring game. Defense will be to the fore for the Vikings, but I think as the game goes on, it's just going to be the Lions imposing their will, trick play after trick play. They're just going to bring more and more stuff out. Ben Johnson is in his bag, as the kids say right now. He's just going through. He's going through play after play, and I think they just have too much on offense. I think they're going to win by 7 in the end. I think it's going to be a nice close contest, back and forth, similar to the way the Niners game was the other night. But they've just got too much. They're an absolute joy to watch. They're a powerhouse. Their offensive players are just humming right now, and I think they're going to be too much. It's going to be too much for Minnesota.
We'll go down to our Cork division now. Like this definitely seems like not quite an immovable object and unstoppable force, but these are two teams who have been playing such fantastic football. It'll almost be a shame to see one of these be the number 5 seed, but that's just the nature of football. It's tough enough look that they have to share a division with each other. Who has the edge here? And big question actually, does this game being in Ford Field sort of mean something for these two teams?
I've been back and forth on this, and even as I was listening to Kieran there, I don't know, am I tempted to change my pick here, because I do have the Vikings winning this game. I just thought the Packers could not get anything going against this defense last week. You're right. We're nitpicking here. We're kind of we really are splitting hairs, because I do think the Lions have the best offense in the league. Like Goff against San Fran, he was 26-34, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, 132 passer rating. I mean, he's been excellent from start to finish. Like every single time they've needed him, he's driven them up the field time after time. But the exact same thing can be said for Darnold. Everything he's needed to do, and you could argue that Darnold's been under more pressure because everybody has been expecting him to just turn back into what he was. Sam Darnold seeing ghosts. The old narrative was going to come back to play to bite him, but he has just been. He's answered every single question from week one. You're right. Like both of these teams deserve a home field game in the playoffs, but that's just not the nature of the league, unfortunately. I think Ben Johnson, as you mentioned, I think he's going to be one of the hottest properties in the league in the off season. I think his phone is going to be ringing off the hook. So, but I think on balance, and again, it's the defensive struggles that the injuries that have hampered the Lions season. Look, teams have been able to score on them, and I give the edge to the Vikings just because of the way the defense is playing at the moment. Look, you look at the Vikings offense last week as well. Justin Jefferson didn't score a touchdown. It was no problem. It was Naylor, Addison, Cam Akers. So like these guys are stepping up as well. The Packers could not get a pass rush last week, and maybe that's because the defensive line, the D line was, maybe it was terrible, but I don't know, was the offensive line were they playing that well? But Sam Darnold just seemed to have acres of time to throw the ball, and if that's a factor, that'll play into the hands of the Vikings as well. Again, you could flip over and back all night long, but I'm going to give the edge to the Vikings.
Yeah, I've been flipping over and back on this one a lot as well, because I think as Kieran before you alluded to, the Lions are definitely going to bring out a lot of their weapons here in terms of trick plays, in terms of things that you were not expecting to do, in terms of what the offensive playbook has deep down. I don't know about the wisdom of that, because they surely want to be saving some of that for the actual playoffs, but they're definitely going to bring everything, and the fact that it's a home field, the atmosphere there is going to be one of the best in the league so far. You look at what the Vikings are doing. Sam Darnold's playing excellent. Defense is playing excellent. It really is difficult to call. I'm giving it to the Vikings, though, for one reason. Who do I think is more likely to throw an interception in the fourth quarter if the game is close? I think Jared Goff is actually slightly more likely to do that, as much as he has probably better talent around him. And that's unbelievable to say, considering, Justin Jefferson and all the other guys that are on the Vikings offense. But I don't know. I just think that if someone's gonna throw the INT or give up a turnover, I think the Brian Flores defense is more likely to grab the ball off Jared Goff. But I'm not saying that with a huge amount of conviction, and I am really looking forward to seeing how this game turns out. Final word to you, Noel.
What a game. What a game to look forward to. This is the one this week, like yourselves, back and forth, back and forth. Both teams have been phenomenal. Both teams deserve to be up there. You know, it's going to be unfortunate for whichever team does lose. And I'm just going to go with the Lions. I just think the Lions over the last couple of years have really felt like they've been building up to this point to become the class of the NFC and to be the biggest challenger in the NFC going for a Super Bowl. I know they've had injuries, but I just feel home field advantage, and there's just something about this Lions team. I find it hard to go against them. Vikings were fantastic last week against the Packers. They've looked amazing all season, even though they kind of quietly went about their business before we really all started looking at them later in the season. But I don't know. I find it hard to go against the Lions at the moment, even with the injuries. I think they'll be enough to take what should be a phenomenal game and probably a tight game.
Right, that brings us into the final segment of this NFL Week 18 preview. We're going to spin through, and I mean spin through, lads, the 7 games we put into the quick pick section. The reason why they're in here is because they don't really mean a hell of a lot unless you are one of the teams playing in it. First one is Texans at Titans. Texans coming to 1-point favorites. Will Levis, I think, is starting as quarterback for the Titans. So that reason I'm going for the Texans to win. No.
Will Levis is playing, so Texans.
Florida man.
Texans.
And Kieran Cork.
Clean sweep, Texans.
Clean sweep for the Texans. Right. Jacksonville Jaguars travel to the Indianapolis Colts. Colts are definitely banged up after what was an embarrassing show against the New York Giants, something we will touch on later as we talk about what coaches and managers are potentially on the chopping block. But as for this game, I'm going for the Colts to get a win just about. Kieran in Florida.
Do
Supporting his hometown, I suppose. Kieran in Cork, let's go for it.
Colts as well.
And no.
Yeah, I'm going for the Colts as well.
In fairness, stranger things have happened. We're going to your actual team, Kieran, in Florida. As the New York Giants face against the Philadelphia Eagles. Am I right in saying that Saquon is being sat for this game? Regardless of what happens, I think the Eagles are going to win this one personally. What way do you see this going?
Yeah, Eagles are winning this.
He says through gritted teeth, no.
Yeah, same here, Eagles.
And Kieran and Cork?
Yeah, the tank is back on track, Eagles.
The tank is back on track. Speaking of tank, the New England Patriots are currently sitting in the number 1 spot, and they are hosting the Buffalo Bills. Drake May and the starters will be playing for the Patriots. Mason Rudolph and the backups will be playing for the Bills. Interesting one, of the last time the Patriots had a decent performance against the Bills was at home. It was the last good game of the Mac Jones era. That said, I think the Bills are good enough. It was funny that Mason Rudolph threw one pass last week and a 67-yard touchdown. So I don't know. I just don't trust Gerard Mayo and the Patriots to put up the good performance that they want to do. I think the Bills are going to win this one. Kieran in Cork.
Bills as well.
No.
Yeah, Bills for me, yeah.
And the Florida view?
Bills.
All right. You're wearing your Joe Montana jersey, so I'm going to go back to you on this, Kieran, as the 49ers travel to face against the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals are 5-point favorites. I'm backing the 49ers just based on their performance against the Lions. What do you say?
Yep, faithful to the Bay. Give me the Niners.
Faithful to the Bay, indeed. No.
I'm going to go with the Cards in this one. I mean, this one, again, you could toss a coin, but I think the Niners have had just a bad season, so I think the Cards will take the win.
And Kieran?
No, I got the Niners as well for the same reason as you just said. They played well last week, and I think they'll finish on a high.
Said most of us going against the spread there. Interesting one. Chargers travel to face against the Las Vegas Raiders. Chargers 5-point favorites. Have generally been playing much stronger football, even though I'm not quite sure how many of their starters will be on the field. I think the Chargers are going to win this one. No.
Yeah, Chargers for me.
Kieran and Cork.
Chargers, yeah.
And Kieran in Florida.
Chargers for me.
And the final one in this quick pick round is the Seattle Seahawks as they travel to the Los Angeles Rams. I was so geared up for this to be the big game to decide who's going to win the NFC West. But as circumstances have dictated, the Rams have already sealed the division. So they have nothing to play for. So they will be resting their starters, which is weird because if they lose and Tampa Bay win, the Rams will drop to the number 4 seed based on the conference record tiebreaker. I think the Seahawks are going to win this one because they, I think, mentally need to get a win over the Rams because that matchup over the years has not served them well. So I'm going for the Seahawks to win this one. Kieran in Florida.
Seahawks for me.
No.
I'm going to go with the Rams for this one.
And Kieran in Cork.
No, Seahawks as well.
Right, that's it for that's every NFL game we have previewed, our regular season game. That's it, it's done. So in terms of who is still going to be left in the job by the time the 2025 season starts, season kicks off, It's just an interesting one, kind of looking at the kind of bookies' favorites, because as we've spoken about so far this season, the likes of Doug Peterson, Brian Dayball, Antonio Pierce, it seems like things are going south. But Kieran in Florida, I know you have definitely, so more so than the bookies and most of the people looking at this, was definitely a crew in the NFL. Do you think are probably more deserving, or certainly definitely looking like they could potentially be going out the door? Why don't you set the scene for us?
Yeah, I think. I said it after the London game. I thought Doug wasn't coming back with the team, but he's managed to stay on. He's in the good graces of Shad Khan. But I have to think that the entire squad, from Peterson to Press Taylor, Ryan Nielsen, defensive coordinator, and this has to be it for Balky. I've got people that I work with, friends that are Jags fans. They want Balky gone, long gone. And they have to all be gone. I mean, if the Jags it's another disastrous season for the Jags. If they're gonna start building on whatever they have with Brian Thomas Jr. and with Lawrence, they've got to empty the house, start fresh. So I expect them all to be gone by this day next week or
earlier. No, your view on the situation in Dallas, because I think it's a very difficult one to read. If you based on what the bookies say, it seems that Mike McCarthy is definitely one of the leading candidates to lose his job. But because of that late season surge, because you never really know what's happening in Dallas, and I don't know, I think there's something about his contract situation as well. The fact that the short-term contract maybe makes him more likely to be replaced. What is your read on what Dallas are doing? Because you can guarantee, and I'm setting this up now because, as I mentioned earlier, we probably haven't spoken a hell of a lot about the Cowboys during the season, but we know as soon as the regular season ends, the Cowboys will be front page news all over again. The fact that he is, I think, as Kieran alluded to earlier, a bit of a player's coach, he seems to have gotten enough out of his guys part of the season. It's definitely making the situation feel more muddled. But if you were to call it now, what way do you think the Cowboys are going to go with their head coach?
Yeah. It's a strange one. There was a point during the season where I was fairly certain that he was going to be gone. I believe his contract is up at the end of the season, and I just, with the way things were going in that division, I thought, right, he's had obviously a number of good seasons. I think they finished 12-5, 3 seasons in a row, which they just didn't have enough time to push on in the playoffs to go where they needed to go. Then with the season the way it was going this year, I just felt like maybe it's time for a change. Maybe they'll kind of let that contract run out, and then they'll just kind of say, look, we gave it a good shot. You did really well in the regular season. I think the Chiefs are probably the only team to have won more games prior to this season in the regular season than the Cowboys. But yeah, they've won a few games recently. You kind of wonder with the Jones family and Jerry Jones, you don't really know what decisions are going to end up being made. So I'm going to guess that he's not going to be there. I'm going to guess that maybe the Cowboys need a bit of a fresh blood come in as the head coach and take a team that does have some really good players and maybe look to do something new with it. But again, it wouldn't surprise me on the opposite end if he ends up staying. I'm just trying to take a shot in the dark here.
Do you know what's being thrown around, though? The idea that McCarthy actually might take the decision out of the Cowboys' hands and leave and go to Chicago instead. Depends on if he gets an offer there, though. I don't know what.
Well, look, in fairness to Mike McCarthy and his history, if he does leave the Dallas Cowboys, he will have suitors. He will have plenty of teams looking to bring him in. Maybe he'll go in somewhere where he won't have someone as kind of as influential and imposing as a Jerry Jones. Maybe he can go in somewhere else and be that kind of experienced head coach who might get a little bit more power where he goes. But he'd certainly have options if he leaves. Now, will he leave or not? I do think it's 50-50. I'm just gonna kind of, as I say, I'm gonna take a shot and say I think he'll go. I think the Cowboys maybe will look to change things up a bit, but look, who knows? It's one of those spots that's going to be very interesting to watch and see what actually does develop there.
Look for Brian Schottenheimer, the OC. Look for him as a probable replacement.
Interesting. All right, there'll certainly be a lot of moving parts once Black Monday comes along next week. Kieran O'Donovan, I think a lot of people are expecting, like we talk about the sort of the prime candidates for getting their job cut, but I'm sort of that interested in that mid-tier people who are still on the precipice. We're not quite sure what we expect from them. We're talking Zach Taylor at the Bengals. We're talking Jerome Mayo at the Patriots. We're talking Brian Callahan. We're talking Kevin Stefanski. Even Mike McDaniel, some people are suggesting that depends on how things turn out, that he may be in more danger than people expect. Is there anybody who you think should probably be more afraid of being in the hot seat than many people are giving credit for.
Yeah, well, we talked about this segment earlier on in the group. I just literally put a word next to everyone, whether it was gone, safe, 50-50, not sure. You mentioned Zach Taylor there. I think Zach Taylor is safe enough. I think he's shown enough, and he seems to have the locker room. I think when there's a problem, you need to fix the problem, and the problem with the Bengals at the moment is the defense. So I expect the defensive coordinator to be gone, and I'd look for them to maybe bring in the likes of a Robert Saleh, who mightn't have stepped up to a head coaching role as well as he would have liked, but I mean he has serious pedigree as a defensive coordinator, and I think they could be frightening with the likes of him in there. You look at Gerard Mayo. I had him down as 50-50. There were times there during the year, and you'd be better to speak on this than I would. You'd be closer to the situation. You'd keep a closer eye on it. I don't know how you'd feel, but I just think if I was a Patriots fan, I'd be looking at the likes of Mike Vrabel and saying, he epitomized the culture there in the Bill Belichick culture, and I don't think he did a terrible job in Tennessee either. I think if I was a Patriots fan, I'd love to see him at the helm there. And depending on whether he's available, whether they'd be interested.
Well, sorry, not to cut you off, but I guess we're on the topic of the Patriots. I definitely look for Mike Vrabel to come in because he is an established head coach. Gerard Mayo has never been a coordinator before he became head coach, and that's the problem. And I think he is going to keep his job because of his relationship with the Kraft family. And I think there is an understanding that the job he was given was very difficult because of the roster that he inherited. I think there's other understandings as well in terms of the fact that it's the entire organization has to be rebuilt. It's like a new head coach isn't going to fix everything in terms of recruitment, in terms of the fact that the only draft picks that the Patriots have gotten in the last few years that have worked out well are first rounders. All other rounders don't seem to perform in the way that they should. But the big thing that is annoying me with Gerard Mayo is the fact that I actually don't see a progression in how the team is playing week on week. It doesn't matter if we lose games. Is there any part of the team which is getting better week on week? The quarterback is. Nobody else isn't. And especially because he's supposed to be the great defensive mastermind. The defense has taken a step back from last year. Now, we've lost Judon. We've lost a couple of other defensive pieces as well, and they haven't been replaced. And the Patriots are sitting in probably the best draft capital and the most cap space heading into this year. So I think he will be given a pass for that. But the pressure is certainly on him from the first game of next season. As much as Mike Vrabel is somebody who I'd like to see come in, I don't think it's going to happen. But I'll let you finish your piece on the rest of the league as I sort of put myself back in my Patriots box.
Yeah, no, look, if you're a loyal owner like the Kraft family are, you want to give somebody extra time. But if there's somebody else that you see as a potential suitor, you don't want to run the risk of losing out on those. If you feel like there's a chance in the long term, you might be moving on. So it'd be just interesting to see, what way that turns out. And if nobody comes from Mike Vrabel this year, you'd wonder what is there something that we don't know? Because I just felt like I wouldn't have put him in the bottom 10 or even the bottom half of the coaches in the league when he was there with Tennessee. Just the last point I'll make on the list is Mike McDaniel. I think he's somebody who's under a lot more pressure, or should be under a lot more pressure than I suppose what's being talked about at the moment. I'd be honest, I think the Dolphins are a running joke under Mike McDaniel. He does not inspire confidence in me, and I've given out about him throughout the season. Just because the nature of the way he kind of plays into the kind of silliness at times. You look at a Dan Campbell, creating this hard-nosed mentality. The Dolphins are leaning into every negative narrative that's been said about them. They can't play in the cold. They can't can't step up to the bigger teams. And so as much of a very cerebral offensive mind as he is, he's in that class with the likes of your LaFleur and your McVay. I just don't think he's an all-round as good a head coach as any of those guys, and I think he should be on the hot seat as well.
Sorry, Kieran, just on what you say about Mike McDaniel, you're spot on. Against teams he should be beat. All right, the good teams, they don't mean he's 3-13 against teams of 500 or above, and that's where it comes down to, So he can look good against the poor teams, but when you put him up against good teams and they need to win, they just haven't had it. And I agree with you. There's something about his personality, jokey and whatever. It doesn't feel like, it feels like they have the weapons there, and he's smart and he can draw up good plays against poor teams, but he just can't do it when it really counts. And I think he is in a lot of danger.
Yeah, interesting.
Sorry.
No, go on.
It's just the last point I was going to make was that, and that's the thing. Like, there seems to be an assumption that the best coordinators in the league automatically should step up to be head coaches. But, sometimes, if you're an excellent coordinator, maybe that's what you're meant to be. Like, look at Steve Spagnuolo. He is just absolutely class as a defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, and I couldn't see him anywhere else at the moment. So not everyone needs to make that step up, and a very good offensive mind, great play caller, but I don't know if he needs to be in the limelight as much as he is.
Yeah, very good point. And just in terms of his personality, I became a bit of a fan of him after watching the in-season Hard Knocks last year. I don't know if it's a generational thing or I'm just kind of got caught by the media boat, but the more I think about it, the more I realize, what do other NFL head coaches think of him and his way, and think, these guys are going to be pushovers if they're seeing somebody who is very very TikTok friendly, let's say. So I don't know. It'll just be interesting to see what way the Dolphins as an organization look at things. Final word to you, Kieran in Florida, because you were obviously keeping, I know you weren't watching the game, but a lot of talking points came out of the Giants-Colts game last week in terms of the futures of not only the Giants organization, but the Colts as well. Those moving pieces are definitely going to be very interesting in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I think if I was Shane Steichen, I'd be real nervous right now. I mean, the Colts are your classic kind of meh team. They're not great. They're not terrible. They're your classic 8-8, 9-8, 8-9 team. And I think a couple of things are in play. Everyone's heard McAfee go off, so I'm not gonna touch that stuff. But I think between last year with the Jonathan Taylor situation, where he basically gave the team the middle finger and said, "You know what? I'm getting paid. Screw you guys. When I come back, or when I get paid, I'll come back." And then the Anthony Richardson situation today. I mean, I just heard, earlier that they would have taken Will Levis in the first round if he was available ahead of Richardson. I mean, it's a bizarrely run organization, and I think they've handled everything poorly. Notwithstanding the Anthony Richardson, tagging himself out of the game. I think that was terrible too. So I think he's definitely under pressure. And I'll finish with the Giants. I think, and Brian and myself go back and forth. He seems to think that that Shane is safe. I can't see a situation, and it's going to be really hard for me if the Giants end up keeping Dable and Shane, or even just keeping Shane. I think they've got to. I've said it multiple times. I think they've got to clean house. Bowen, Kafka, Shane, Dable, they've all got to go. This is the 10th year of Giant misery, and we're just spinning our wheels. Nothing's happening. And if they leave one out and keep the other one, I just despair for the future. They're losing traction. They're losing fans. They're losing the goodwill that they've built up over 100 years. And if Mara doesn't see that and pull the plug on everybody, then I'll be very, very disappointed next week. So that's all I'll say on that.
I'd say for my own personal mental health, I certainly enjoy the days when this podcast isn't always filled with the words of Shane is terrible, Shane has to go, Shane is doing a bad job. Obviously, we talk about Joe Shane and not myself. But until then, thank you very much for everybody for joining us as we look ahead towards the final regular season game of this year. And I hope you all join us for our plethora of stuff which is coming during the playoffs, including, of course, every game being previewed piece by piece. But for now, Kieran, and Noel, thank you very much for joining us. And to all of you listening, good night.